The blood-smeared phone wouldn't stop ringing. It buzzed against wet asphalt, the cracked screen flashing the same unfamiliar name again and again. Collector. Priority line. Red and blue emergency lights washed over everything in pulsing waves while rescue tools screamed through twisted metal. Somewhere inside the wreck, Daniel Porter was still trapped. People moved fast and spoke in short commands, but no one looked Elena in the eye long enough to tell her what her body already knew. The phone chimed. Not a call this time. A notification. Your escrow deadline expires in 11 minutes. The syndicate requires confirmation. Her stomach dropped so hard it felt like falling. Those words didn't belong at the edge of a highway. They belonged in locked rooms, in whispered deals, in places where names weren't used. A paramedic glanced at her with practiced sympathy, assuming this was the worst moment of her life. He didn't understand this was only the beginning, because that message wasn't meant for a man dying in twisted metal. It was meant for a man she was suddenly realizing she didn't know at all. For 20 years, Elena Porter believed she had married the safest man alive. Daniel was quiet and predictable, a middle manager at a logistics company, the type of man who packed leftovers for lunch and ironed his shirts on Sunday nights. He didn't drink much. He didn't gamble. He didn't stay out late. He didn't raise his voice. When life got loud, Daniel got calmer. He liked to say boring was stable, and stable was how people survived. Elena built her life around that stability, around the idea that whatever else happened, Daniel would be the same tomorrow. After the crash, time turned soft and strange. The house filled with flowers and food and condolences. People spoke to her in the careful tones reserved for tragedy. Her sister cleaned a kitchen that didn't need cleaning. Neighbors offered help they couldn't define. Their son kept asking when Dad was coming home, as if the right phrasing might change the answer. Elena learned how to nod at words she didn't absorb. She learned how to say thank you without feeling it. She learned how to sit very still so she wouldn't break in front of people. And in the quiet between visitors, she began noticing cracks. A second phone she had never seen before, tucked under the driver's seat like it had been used recently and put away quickly. An envelope with a P.O. box number she didn't recognize. A banking alert from an institution she'd never heard of flickering on his laptop before disappearing. Like a blink she wasn't sure she'd seen. Little tremors. Too small to explain, too sharp to ignore. The spare phone demanded a 6-digit code. Elena tried birthdays and anniversaries, their sons' numbers, anything that had ever mattered. Nothing worked. Then she remembered a sentence Daniel once whispered late at night, years ago, when he thought she was half asleep. People double back on the things they're trying hardest to forget. On impulse, she entered the date of his mother's funeral. The phone unlocked. What she found inside didn't look like a secret habit. It looked like a system. Encrypted apps. Anonymous message threads. Transaction summaries updating constantly. Large sums moving in and out with the precision of a machine. It wasn't messy. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned. This wasn't a man hiding something small. This was infrastructure. She scrolled until her eyes burned, telling herself to stop, telling herself she didn't want to know. Then she found the photo. Daniel, sitting in their backyard, face calm, holding a handwritten note. I confirm I control the funds. Behind him, blurred but unmistakable, 6 duffel bags stuffed with cash. Her hands started shaking so violently she had to set the phone down and grip the counter until the trembling eased. The kitchen looked the same as always. Their home looked normal. The normalness felt like a lie. She picked the phone back up anyway. A spreadsheet labeled like business records, but it wasn't shipments or invoices. It was bets, sports, elections, cryptocurrency swings, obscure events she didn't even understand. But Daniel wasn't gambling. Daniel was running the table. He wasn't the player. He was the house. The man who hated uncertainty had built a hidden casino inside it. Millions processed in a year. Money laundered through shell accounts. Revenue splits feeding upward to names she didn't recognize. And one name appeared again and again. Sentinel. The money from Sentinel arrived in perfectly rounded sums, steady as a metronome. Whoever Sentinel was, they weren't a client. They were the source. 3 days later, the doorbell rang. 2 men stood on her porch with faces so ordinary they didn't stick in memory. Both held identical umbrellas, though the sky was clear. They spoke politely, calmly, like professionals. "Mrs. Porter," they said, "we're here for Daniel's obligations." Elena's voice came out thin. "My husband is dead." One of them nodded as if acknowledging a scheduling conflict. "We're aware," he said. They asked to come inside, and the way they smiled made it clear she didn't truly have a choice. In her living room, surrounded by family photos, they placed a USB drive on her coffee table and explained that Daniel had failed to complete a final transaction due to his sudden unavailability. $620,000. 48 hours. Elena stared at the number. "I don't have that kind of money." "It's not your money," one of them said. "It's escrow. You're not paying. You're releasing." Escrow. The same word from the roadside message. As they left, one man paused at the door and asked her, softly, not to make them come back. It wasn't a threat the way people imagine threats. It was worse. It sounded like certainty. That night, Elena didn't sleep. She listened to the house settle and thought every creak sounded like someone moving. She replayed memories looking for signs. The way Daniel always sat with his back to a wall in restaurants. The way he checked the locks twice but laughed it off when she noticed. The way he avoided certain topics with a calmness that now felt rehearsed. In the morning she drove to Daniel's office, desperate for something solid. His desk was spotless. Not tidy, sterile. Co-workers were sympathetic but vague. They described him with the same word again and again. Quiet. Quiet no longer sounded like a personality trait. It sounded like camouflage. On the drive home, she noticed a crumpled parking stub in the glove compartment. A downtown hotel. 2:14 a.m. 2 weeks before the crash. Daniel had told her he was out of town for work. The hotel wasn't even in the same direction. She drove there on instinct. The receptionist didn't recognize Daniel's name, but she recognized his face. "Oh, him," she said quietly. "He always paid in cash." "How often?" Elena asked. The receptionist hesitated. "Every week," she said. "For years. Every week. For years." Elena felt the world tilt. This wasn't one lie. It was a second life with a schedule. Back home, she tore Daniel's study apart. Drawers, vents, behind books. Nothing, until she remembered the loose floorboard beneath the radiator, the one Daniel always said he'd fix tomorrow. Inside was a metal lockbox. 3 passports with Daniel's face and different names. Prepaid debit cards. Cash. A safe deposit key. And a photograph. Daniel at a poker table, surrounded by men whose faces had been scratched out with a knife. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, "If I disappear, they did it." The key led her to a small credit union outside the city. A manager escorted her to a windowless room and opened the safe deposit box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to her, none sent. Daniel had been writing confessions in secret, as if practicing for a day he might not reach. He wrote that it started as a favor to a coworker with a gambling problem. A favor became debt. Debt became threats. Threats became work. Work became responsibility. Responsibility became ownership. He wrote that he tried to get out. He wrote that he was afraid. He wrote that he was sorry. The last letter ended abruptly. They're going to shut me down. For good. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Elena, forgive me. And please, don't trust anyone who comes looking for money. They will lie. They will tell you I owe them. But the truth is, the page was torn, the end missing, as if someone had taken it. There was also a flash drive. At home, Elena plugged it in. A password prompt appeared. She tried anniversaries, birthdays, nothing. Then she typed the date of the crash. The drive unlocked. Hundreds of files, financial records, chat logs, wallet keys, photos of meetings with blurred faces, and one audio file labeled, "If you're hearing this, it's already too late." Daniel's voice filled the room, and hearing fear in him felt like hearing a stranger wearing his voice. "Elena," he said, "I'm sorry. I tried to get out." He said they found out he'd been documenting everything. He said they thought he was skimming. He said they don't let people quit. He warned her. If they came to her, they'd claim he owed them money, but it was a trick. They wanted the ledger. They wanted the trail erased. "Don't give them anything," he said. "Don't trust." A bang. A crash. A shout. Footsteps. Daniel's breathing turned frantic. "Elena," he whispered, "listen. The crash won't be in." The recording cut off mid-sentence. Elena sat completely still. The crash hadn't been random. Someone had ended him. Someone had forced a collision and called it an accident. Someone had made sure he couldn't finish the warning. And now those people were watching her. That night she drove to the police because it was the last normal option left. Normal people go to the police. Normal people believe authority means protection. Normal people believe there are lines you don't cross. She handed over everything. The phone, the letters, the flash drive, the proof, and waited for shock, urgency, outrage. But the detective assigned to her case was strangely calm. His expression never broke. He studied the documents like he was appreciating craftsmanship. "Well put together," he murmured. "Very detailed." Then he asked about the men with umbrellas. Identification. License plates. Anything useful. Elena told him she didn't know. He nodded, leaned back, and spoke gently, like he was correcting a misunderstanding. "Mrs. Porter, organized crime doesn't send polite men with umbrellas to ask for money," he said. "It doesn't schedule appointments. It doesn't hand over USB drives." Elena stared at him. Then who were they? The detective closed the file and smiled. Not a warm smile. A knowing one. "I think they were looking for that drive," he said. "And now that we have it, we'll handle things from here." Her skin prickled. Something in his certainty made her step back. "Don't worry," he added. "You won't be hearing from them again." When Elena left the station, 2 black sedans idled across the street. Watching. Waiting. She stood on the steps for a moment, blinking against the street lights, trying to convince herself it was coincidence. Then she pulled into traffic, and they pulled out too, following her. Her chest tightened until breathing hurt. She took one turn, then another, and the sedan stayed with her. Patient, measured, not chasing, escorting, hurting, as if her path was already decided and they were simply ensuring she didn't deviate. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text appeared. "You shouldn't have gone inside." Elena's blood went cold. Another message followed. "We gave you a simple deadline." She glanced at the rearview mirror. Headlights burned behind her like unblinking eyes. In that moment, the truth settled in her bones with a weight she couldn't shake. She hadn't brought evidence to safety. She had delivered it. She remembered the detective's smile and understood it differently now. The calm wasn't confidence in justice. It was ownership. Daniel hadn't been trapped by criminals who lived outside the system. He had been trapped by a machine that wore the system like a uniform. A machine that could accept evidence with clean hands and file it away so it never surfaced again. A machine that didn't threaten loudly. It replaced what it needed. Her phone buzzed again. Incoming call, collector, priority line. Elena stared at the name until her eyes burned. She wanted to throw the phone out the window and keep driving until the road ended. But she understood now. Refusal wasn't escape. Refusal was only choosing how the punishment would arrive. She answered. Silence for a beat, like a smile on the other end. Then a calm male voice, close and gentle, as if speaking from the passenger seat. Mrs. Porter, he said. Thank you for answering. Elena's throat tightened. What do you want? A soft pause. You already know, the voice said. Daniel knew. Daniel understood deadlines. My husband is dead, Elena whispered. Another pause. Not grief, not surprise. Calculation. Daniel is unavailable, the voice replied. Unavailable. Not dead. Not gone. Unavailable like a canceled appointment. Elena's stomach turned. You have been made custodian, the voice continued. That's the simplest way to explain it. I didn't agree to anything. You don't need to, the voice said. Agreement is a luxury. Deadlines are not. Elena's hands shook on the wheel. I don't have the money. It's not your money, the voice said patiently. You're not paying. You're releasing. She glanced in the mirror. The sedans were still there. Still patient. Still close enough to remind her that every word mattered. What if I don't? She asked, and hated how small her voice sounded. A pause. Then, quietly, the voice said, Then we assume you're stealing. The call ended. No raised voice. No dramatic threat. A conclusion delivered like policy. Elena's breath came out shaky. She realized the fear she'd been feeling wasn't panic anymore. It was clarity. A cold realization settling over her like a sheet of ice. Daniel had been the calmest man she'd ever known because he had been living under a knife for years, and calm was how he avoided provoking the cut. He hadn't been stable. He had been controlled. And now the control had moved to her. The sedans kept following, not rushing, not leaving, as if they had all the time in the world. Elena drove through streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar, past people living normal lives inches away from hers collapsing. She tried to picture a way out, tried to imagine a person she could trust, tried to reach for the comfort of normal rules. But the rules had been written by the same machine that was watching her. She heard Daniel's last recording again in her mind. The unfinished sentence like a blade caught between seconds. The crash won't be in. Not an accident. Not random. Not fate. A warning he didn't get to finish because someone walked into the room and made sure he never finished anything again. And now, as the headlights behind her crept closer by inches instead of miles, Elena understood the final truth. Daniel had never stood a chance. And unless she learned to become quieter than fear, colder than grief, and smarter than the machine that replaced him, neither did she. Because the people who silenced Daniel weren't going to make the same mistake twice. They had already chosen their replacement, and they were already driving her toward the part of the story where she stopped being a widow and started being property.